of the best examples of Indigenous cultural knowledge systems and technologies and business coming together that I think everyone can resonate with is the helicopter. Our people thought of that thousands of years ago with the boomerang and around physics and dynamics that create the propellers. We have a really long history of integrating First Nations knowledge with technology and creating businesses out of them. And something that's very exciting is the work that First Nations people are doing at the moment, contributing to metaverse bridging technologies. So there's entire nations in the Pacific that are making digital twins of their country because they know they're going to be underwater. So using the technology in the most critical way to preserve cultural knowledge, language and law so their future generations can have the opportunity to walk on that country, albeit in the metaverse. There are so many opportunities for First Nations people to create amazing businesses and to be part of amazing businesses using our cultural knowledge systems as a foundation. We're seeing the fastest growing sector of businesses in Australia are First Nations businesses. We have vast amounts of people bringing incredible knowledge sets about natural resource management to the fore in dealing with climate change issues. We're seeing people looking at how we trade fairly using geo-specific information about Manuka honey is a great example of wanting that provenance to be attached to a brand. We're doing that with a lot of Indigenous foods across Australia. So lots of companies and businesses are starting to look at competitive edge, and our mobs, we think differently. We have a whole different way that we look at the world and that we look at problems and that we develop solutions from. And so our peoples are a vast and untapped resource for competitive edge in an innovative era. Lots of businesses around the world now have ESG responsibilities and targets. It's a very important mandate for operating business today, is that you meet your environmental, social governance benchmarks. So working with our people to do that is a really great way to achieve that all in one go, because that's the way that we operate is consistent with ESG principles. Lots of businesses across the world have had initiatives for a long time to try and work more effectively with First Nations peoples as partners and as employees. And unfortunately, what we have seen is those initiatives have largely fallen short. Our people are attracted into the roles and they stay in those roles for 12 to 18 months and then leave. We have a really high attrition rate in particular big global corporations. And that's because the cultural safety isn't embedded in the way that the business operates. Everything from HR all the way through to how you deal with customers can be culturally misaligned. The other big trap that businesses fall into is putting the cultural load onto the First Nations people to do everything that is cultural. So you have a high degree of burnout of our people working in organisations because they're asked to do anything that's related to Indigenous initiatives. They have to take that on. So what we say to businesses, if you would like to work with our people in an effective way, is to make sure that you're coming from a foundation of cultural safety, that the burden or responsibility for bridging that cultural gap isn't placed on First Nations people. It's an initiative that's carried throughout the whole organisation for every individual, and that our people aren't brought in at the ground floor. We have a lot of people that are in traineeships or that are situated in lower levels of an organisation where there's a massive opportunity to bring in our skills, knowledge, relationships, ways of knowing, being and doing through all levels of the organisation. And we'd love to see more senior executives that are First Nations people. And where we do have organisations that have senior leadership that involve First Nations people, those companies are very successful. First Nations communities around the world have been calling on businesses to meet us where we are for a long time. So instead of making decisions in a building in a city about how businesses would like to engage with our people have been inviting CEOs and senior executives and other members of company onto our country to meet us where we are for a long time. In Australia, we have some really great initiatives like the Jarwin Initiative, where senior executives spend weeks on country living and working in Aboriginal communities to immerse themselves, to ask questions in a safe place, and to learn. And it's not until you can spend some time on country with us that you can understand the right questions to ask our people about how we might like to be involved in your business operations. Some examples of Indigenous knowledge systems and new technologies like nanotechnologies coming together to create incredible products. I think you can't look past what the Dungulunga mob have done in Western Queensland. So there's a very spiky, venomous grass in Australia called spinifex, and it grows a lot in the arid regions. And if you get pricked by the tip of the grass, it's incredibly painful for a couple of days. No one in the world, apart from the Dungulunga mob, saw that grass and thought of condoms. Okay, the spikiest, most venomous, awful grass into the most intimate parts of your body. But they were able to understand that the resin that's produced by that grass is incredibly strong. This was so strong that it was used to stick stone and wood together to create tools. That's really massive, incredible adhesive. And they were able to work with researchers in nanotechnologies to think about, well, what if that was also very flexible? And so Western science and Indigenous science came together, and in the lab, they were able to create the world's strongest latex through using these two incredible ways of thinking. And so that is a product that's been created from Indigenous ingenuity and Western science coming together and looking at how can we create something new from these two different knowledge systems.